ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie the Blerd Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. I am joined today with a very special guest who's been on a few times. We've been talking Weapon X-Men, so I'm gonna assume some of you already know what time it is, but I got one of the legends, Joe Casey, in the building. Right, well, not in the building, but on the call. Y'all know what I mean. And for those who are unfamiliar, Joe Casey has been absolutely killing it on Weapon X-Men. Been doing fantastic work with stuff like the Johnny Quest series over at Dynamite, also doing the Space Quest, the crossover, Space Ghost, Johnny Quest, Blood Squad 7, which has been absolutely just phenomenal over at Image, and doing Kneel Before Zod, and also was responsible for a little animated series you guys probably heard about it. Maybe, I don't know. It was called Ben 10 and Generator Rex. Y'all might have heard of it. I don't know. How are you doing, Joe?
Well, Ernie, glad to be here, man. Good to see you again.
Time flew. Time flew by, and we're on Weapon X-Men number 5, and this is a really big one. I love it especially because it dives right into like what I always kind of felt was like the perfect jumping on point for any X-Men fan. Right there, just right after Giant Size X-Men number 1 from 1975. I'm just going to say right now, this issue's great. It's great. It's fantastic.
Oh,
there's some really cool stuff that happens in this. We're going to pick your brain. I'm going to pick your brain about it. But I just wanted to ask this whole thing has been kind of jumping into the time travel spectrum. And I was curious to know, like, because you're where we're at, what we're specifically focused on, the what was X-Men number 95, which is the death of Thunderbird. What was the most, I guess, fun or rewarding part of kind of revisiting that comic, getting to revisit that story and tell it from a different angle?
Well, it was one of those things where I love the idea of looking at an early comic book, something that was done, in this case, 50 years ago, and done for a certain audience. I mean, these guys were making comics for kids, and they knew it. That's what they were in for. There was no sense of this is before the direct market. This is before any bookstore sales. They thought that they were writing comics for, at best, maybe some college kids, but for the most part, their audience was, 10 to 12-year-old boys, basically. So, they did what they could. It was a monthly grind. They were churning them out. And the genius of certain comics from the past, to me, are almost accidental because they were just pumping them out so quickly.
Right.
For something to be really good, of a high level, was like amazing. And if you think about the way they made them. So for something like the early X-Men comics, I think that it's interesting to see one writer, in this case Chris Claremont, spend basically 17 years refining and really drilling down on his own approach to the characters, and letting them evolve and pushing them along and really deepening them as time went on. But Thunderbird was a character that didn't get that chance because he took him right out of the game. I mean, he did, Claremont subsequently did some flashback stuff that did deepen the character to some degree, but not to the degree of the other more famous X-Men, Storm, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Banshee even. So the thing about this issue for me was that it was a chance to really deepen Thunderbird's character, hopefully to a level that matched his other fellow X-Men. Now, I don't think I got close because I can't pack 17 years of residence into one issue. But I took a step in that direction, and that I'm pretty happy that I was able to do that.
How dare you not be able to fit 17 years? And that's a shame. That's a crime.
I gave it a shot. I gave it my best shot.
But no, I think you did a really good job at it. And also, and I think it is really something that I think, especially if you've been reading the last few issues, it's kind of been that thing where with each passing issue, a little bit more. There's been some nods towards kind of getting some of that back, so that when you get to this issue, you can kind of just go right into it and, not really feel like, oh, this is coming from out of nowhere, or anything
Right.
like that. Not only was it like a, that jumping on point for the X-Men, but it was also, at this, specific time, the X-Men are like, I would say most of them are like night and day, different characters, from what they were back then. So the fact that you have, in this particular instance, two characters involved in the story, who were there back then, and as well as
Yeah.
being there now, and kind of seeing the difference on what they were like. It's like, okay, this one page I get to see Wolverine hanging out with the team, with Cyclops, and he's the one character. But then, like, you get to this other scene, it's like, well, this is present day Wolverine. And I get to see how he is here, and the same goes for Thunderbird. Kind of get that contrast of characters. I think he did a really good job of like really just showcasing where they were versus where they are like right this second.
Well, where they were was easy. That's all original Claremont dialogue. All the scenes with the X-Men team. That's right out of X-Men '95. In fact, when I turned in the final pass on the script, there's a bit where they're walking through the base, and Cyclops refers to Nightcrawler as Kurt. It's Kurt Wagner. That's his name. The assistant editor note came back saying the typical sort of, we should identify him as Nightcrawler, so people know he's Nightcrawler. I was like, look, I get it. I'm not changing Claremont's dialogue for the sake of a reader clarity that's not necessary, by the way. Nobody's reading this that hasn't read at least 20 years of comic books and probably 20 years of X-Men comic books, so, but that was important to me to keep it, exactly as Claremont had written it. Because that, to me, that really solidifies that the past is the past for these characters. I didn't want to reimagine past events. I mean, I did one retcon of the sequence of the story itself, because there's that thing that Nefaria sets off, and I forget what it's called now.
Oh, is it the Doom switch?
Yeah. In the original story, it's just like suddenly it's like, oh, it's turned off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it was in X-Men '95. So I thought, well, I think we can make that a little more, have a little clever bit in there where it's, Deadpool just hitting a button, in another part of the base, and the X-Men are like, oh, it stopped. Okay, well, let's get out of here.
Well, yeah, because as I remember it, and I went back after I read this issue, I went back and reread '95. So just to kind of like, because I wanted to see the how the different scenes would like, because there were like you had a lot of really cool callbacks to that original issue, because like you were talking about the Kurt scene, I was looking at the other part. I was like, oh yeah, there was a frog guy and I had him, but he got away from me, and I was like, Frog Man. I was like, I remember them fighting animal people, but I was like, I don't specifically remember a frog guy. And when I went back, I was like, that huge omnibus of that early era, I was going back through it, and I saw it, and I was like, oh yeah, there really was this weird little bit where like the Frogman just got up and Kurt didn't even notice that he left. And I was like, it almost felt like comedy. The only thing that would have made it more comedic is if I could have heard the little the hyper exaggerated like twinkle toes sound effects of the frog guy sneaking off. That's the only way it would have been funnier. But but I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing that happened. And yeah, when you get to that scene, I like to often use the phrase "because comic books." That's kind of what that felt like. It was like a Xavier's like, yeah, the bomb it's diffused. Don't worry about it. It's like, it's good. Don't just trust me. It was the 1970s version of Trust Me, Bro.
Well, I chalked that and the whole Frogman bit up to the Marvel style of doing things, where Claremont might have asked for something, and Dave Cockrum was like, I only got 20 pages here, man. So some things have to kind of just be sort of glossed over.
Yeah.
So, and then, like I said, I like when those things exist and you can go back and revisit them. But so to come up with a rationale, this time travel rationale of why that happened the way it did, it's just, it's great. lot of fun.
That's something and you have an opinion on this one way or the other, but I noticed, especially by the time that a lot of y'all see this right now, Marvel is going through their giant size X-Men story arc, which is why I actually thought reading this issue, I was like, you weren't playing around when you said you were the king of like synchronicity and just like being like having your finger on the pulse of stuff that's just like happening while you're working on a book, because it's like, man, I'm looking at it now, it's like, yeah, they're going back through the giant size X-Men era. They literally you just had a storyline just now where Ms. Marvel goes back to literally that first giant size X-Men issue. And they have it's a little bit of time travel shenanigans. And one of the things that kind of got me thinking how much of this was, because obviously you turned in a draft early. I was like, man, how much of this lined up like so perfectly? Was this like, was this coincidence? Was this Tom like spinning plates and weaving magic spells, or like was it or what was it?
Total coincidence. And to his credit, when we were talking about Thunderbird as a member of the team and what my plans were for him at that point, this time last year, Tom had said, we're thinking about a story that has something to do with kind of going back and revisiting those days. That was as detailed as he got at that time. And I was like, well, I don't care about that, really. I mean, thanks for telling me. I mean, unless you're telling me I can't do my story, I'm willing to roll the dice. Let the best story win. You know what I mean? Because having now completed the issue and seen how it turned out, I haven't read the giant size stuff yet. I'm sure it's fine, but I'll stand my story up to any time travel story of the past couple years, and with no problem whatsoever. All the confidence in the world.
But I actually thought it was really cool that in your story, the mission was, no, we're not changing anything. We're preserving. We're trying to make sure everything stays exactly as it was. We're not letting Thunderbird, I guess, not die, like unfake his death or whatever anyone wants to call it.
Fake his life.
Fake his life. We're not gonna let him get away with that. We're not letting the doom switch go off. We're not letting we're not letting anyone be aware that the Weapon X-Men are there. And something to even ask you this too, because I was also curious what your thought process might be on this when it comes to what just happened in the giant size X-Men #1 with time travel and all that crazy wacky chicanery. When it comes to the Deadpool part of it, well, yeah, Wolverine obviously wanted Deadpool to go a specific direction. Was a lot of Wolverine's plan more just him wanting to make sure Deadpool wasn't in the way, or would like put him in a place where he would do the least amount of damage, or did he actually intend for Deadpool to be the one to shut down the doom switch?
Oh that was completely off the game plan, because again, Wolverine had lived through it. He knew that it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So just assumed that was just how it would play out, whatever the weird rationale that Xavier had. Oh, it just switched off on its own. That's good enough for him. So he was legitimately sending Deadpool and Chamber in there to find their Thunderbird. Because as far as he knew, he was in there somewhere trying to mess with this timeline. But of course, as soon as they go in, he smells their Thunderbird in the air, and he's out in the woods somewhere. So yeah, it was a total. The plan was solid.
Okay.
It wasn't that Deadpool wasn't a spoiler.
First of all, like when I got there, I was like, is he just trying to like get this guy out of the way, or because I mean, it's Deadpool. It would be totally on brand for Deadpool to like mess up something, but oddly enough, he actually pulls it off without a hitch. So.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, the only thing that I glossed over, again, for space considerations, they shut off the doomsday switch or whatever, and then the next thing you know, they're kind of running out back outside, and Chamber's like, what do we do? We didn't even find him. And Deadpool's like, let's go. And then I sort of gloss over that. In my mind, sort of the story that takes place between them shutting it down, the doom switch, and leaving the base something happened in there. Some little something, some little Back to the Future Part 2 style shenanigans happened in that little space that we didn't see. So, leaving that open for me to someday come back and maybe tell that story.
Okay. Hey, I think that would be a really like cool little thing to kind of like revisit, because with time travel, it always kind of opens that doorway back up to kind of dive into those moments. Speaking of time travel, because there is something specific that happens at the beginning of the issue, is that Cable does not get involved with the proceedings. And when we get to the end of the issue, it's implied there was like a legit reason why he didn't want to run along with it. But because, at least as far as we know for now, I don't know if Tom has changed his mind. Yeah. I would hope that he would, but I don't have that kind of pull. This is going to be the end for the story so far. Can you give us a hint, like what Cable was alluding to with the crisis that was coming?
Let me see what I can say. The only thing I will say that was part of what was going to come next at some point soon was that there was going to be a situation where different Cables from different eras were going to be plucked out of the time stream and brought to the present day. And the team was going to go up, different members of the team were going to go up against different versions of Cable, like the Rob Liefeld Cable, the Ladrone Cable, the Ascani Sun Cable. All these versions are going to come to the present, and sort of like this men out of time.
Right.
And so it was going to be that was sort of the start of this bigger story that, I don't know if it would necessarily reconcile all of the sort of future mess that Cable has always kind of carried around with him. But it was going to be a story that dealt with some of that.
Cable is a complicated character. When you start out with Cable, I think he's relatively straightforward. I think Cable, for the most part, it's not until you get to like maybe in the mid-aughts, I feel like something happened and Cable just dived off the rails. It was like whatever the same shark that the Fonz hops over is this the same shark that Cable. The same time travel shark that Cable hops over. I can't even really pinpoint the exact moment, but I feel like, there was a point in time where, and I think this kind of goes back to a comment I saw that Tom had made when all the X-Men stuff was getting relaunched. He was talking about how he didn't really want to dive into Cable immediately at the start until eventually we got to Weapon X-Men. It's like, okay, well now Cable can come in. But he was talking about how he didn't want to jump into a character that had this really convoluted backstory, and that there's different he's got all this different stuff going on. I think at the time there was 2 Cables running around. So I think that muddied the water even more. But it makes me both excited and sad at the same time that we're not getting to immediately follow this up, because I really would like to see what you would do with trying to untangle that web.
Untangle is a good word for it. Well, look, I'll tell you that. I mean, from my point of view, and I'm biased. I worked on the character, when I started, and again just recently, is that Cable was one of those characters in the 90s that was able to survive the departure of its creator, who really, even though, Liefeld was a very young guy, very energetic guy, he did have, at least now he says, and I believe him, that he had an idea for this character. He had a plan in mind that had to do with Strife, and had to do with him being, son of Scott Summers and all that stuff. All that stuff was in there as part of the DNA of the character. Now, when Rob left, there was a slight pivot, not too much. I mean, he retained everything that Rob had set up, but it added the element for his monthly series, which I thought was a good one, which was his mission had a lot more to do with Apocalypse. Stopping Apocalypse from doing whatever. It had something to do with the 12, whatever that fucking thing was. And when I was writing the book, one of my charges as we went along was to address that storyline. I was going to do the 12 storyline, and I have notes on it, and even from back in the day, like who the 12 are, why they are, what they are, and how we're going to end that. And it's just for me how that once I left the book, that story got co-opted as it became an X-Men event and became more about the event and the X-Men than it did about Cable and his story. Now I know that Cable and Apocalypse did eventually fight and have it sort of a mano a mano kind of face off.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read it, so I couldn't for the life of you tell me or tell you what that was, what that story was. But I'm really a believer in if a character has a mission,
Mm-hmm.
let that character complete the mission before you kind of reset the table and put him on another path to another mission. And I felt like because the 12 storyline got co-opted by the X-Men titles, this big event, that Cable never got to sort of finish his mission. Not in a satisfactory way anyway,
Right.
because it had to be more than just a fight with Apocalypse. That's why my plan was it involved the 12, it involved a final confrontation, it involved all this stuff again to put a cap on those plot lines, which at that point were about 7 years old, 7 or 8 years old, which is not bad for an X-Men plot line. I mean, some have gone on longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
I was very committed to putting a cap on that so that the character was sort of free and unburdened to become his next thing, to find a new mission, to find a new reason to exist that was clean. When you don't have that, then it becomes very muddied, and he became very confused, and then he became Soldier X at one point, and it was just it got stupid. It got stupid, and I feel like a lot of that, to be quite honest, was industry bias against the character. I think there was a period of time when Rob was not in favor and his characters were not in favor. At least that's why Cable became Soldier X. That's why Deadpool became Agent X, because they were, I think, and I think Rob believes it too, and Rob knows better than me. They were trying to screw him. And
Yeah.
didn't do the characters any favors, and so that's kind of part of the risk you run when you create characters for a company that then you don't own them, is that they go on and mismanaged and mishandled, and it happens, believe me, it happens.
If I had a nickel for every time either a character that was created by someone else that was suddenly on the outs, with the publisher, whether it's like Marvel, DC, whoever, for whatever reason, it's like, oh, well, then we're just gonna bury this character. We're just gonna take this character, put him in. I always love to call it witness protection, but either the character gets put in witness protection or the character gets killed off. And I've seen this happen too, where sometimes people don't like a certain character, like whoever's on like a book doesn't like a particular character, and it's like, yeah, I don't know, screw that character, and we're just gonna do whatever we want with it. But in the case of that, we'll have I'm not even 1% shocked that the whole Cable Deadpool thing was handled the way it was handled. I feel like we saw a lot, and not just with Rob, but I think anyone who had left Marvel or DC back during the Image Comics boom, I feel like got a little bit of a shaft. I think the only person who came out of that clean was Jim Lee. like almost completely unscathed.
yeah, I think that's right. Again, that's part of work for hire comics, corporate comics, and hopefully we all go with our eyes open, and that's how it is. In terms of Cable and Weapon X-Men, I have to say I have no regrets on what ends up on the page. What ends up on the page is pretty much, especially in terms of Weapon X-Men, is pretty much exactly what I wanted to end on, or how I wanted the final product to be. And as you can see, I left the door open at the end, something to come next, because you never know. You never know.
Sometimes they'll do this thing where it's like, okay, and this is why before when we talked about this, I was kind of surprised, because Marvel has this thing where probably Marvel more than just about anybody else, they do this thing. We're like, oh, well, we'll do 5 issues here of something, and then we'll come back later, do another 5 issues there of something, and then and just kind of do these little small, kind of self-contained, even though technically they're continuous, but I can't count how many times I've seen, oh, well, we got this book. It's gonna be we've got Ms. Marvel, the New Mutant. Okay, well, that's run its course. Now we got Ms. Marvel Mutant Menace. It's just a series of, multiple little, 4 or 5, issue deals. And that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, I was like, man, I feel like, with the way this ended, it sets itself up so much, so perfectly to come right back. And considering the nature of, the characters involved, it's all either characters who are either, for the most part, pretty long lived, or in the case of Cable, time travelers. I was like, yeah, it'd be really easy to just come right back to this point and pick that up. So I guess what I'm really trying to say here is that for those of y'all watching at home, go buy the shit out of this book. So maybe maybe Tom will change his mind.
Let me say this, believe me, it's not totally up to Tom. And Tom and I had a good time on this book. And I think if it was up to Tom solely, I don't think it would be a question. We probably would have kept going. But Marvel is much more corporate than people realize. And there are many more systems in place than you might think that work to, I'll say it flat out, that work to creativity's detriment. I mean, this is not a hot take, but Marvel Comics, Marvel Entertainment, and DC Comics, they're not in the business of making comics. They're in the business of making money, and they make money by making comics, and that's just how it happens to be. Just like Coca-Cola's in the business of making money by making soft drinks. Just plug in your industry to your product, and every corporation that makes that product is not making that product because they love that product. They're making it to sell and make money. That's just, again, not a hot take, but I think with comics are something that readers and creators take so personally. We take this shit so personally that you don't want to think that way. You don't want to imagine that, some accountant somewhere is really in charge of your favorite characters and all they're looking at on numbers on the sheet. That's what they're doing, man. That's all it comes down to. To put a positive spin on it, we as creators and as fans, we do what we can to work around that reality. Whether it's pure magical thinking or we try to get in there and work the system to our advantage. I mean, we're all in there swinging. That we're not all so cynical that it's just a numbers game.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, I mean, yeah, it's at the end of the day, yeah, I think that, man, yeah, the bean counters, the people with the abacus and the giant calculator with the little lever thing on it, if anyone even still uses that stuff, I doubt it, but it's always what I think of in my head when I think about the money people, the dollars and cents folks that make a lot of the choices. But I really hope that you do get to come back to this, because there was a lot of really good stuff that came through this issue, not the least of which was the Thunderbird portion of it. When you were putting together the plot for this, that Thunderbird was trying to undo his death from that issue, did at any point did you conceive of what that life would have looked like?
Well, yeah, I mean, I sort of, when you're coming up with the basic idea for something, you do go down those pathways just as a writer's exercise. So I thought, there was some wild place that went in my head, just in terms of this would be an interesting story if that, there was a version where the same things happened that happened in the issue. When they come back to the present, for some reason, Thunderbird has been alive the whole time. I didn't quite know how to figure that out, logically, but I had the mind exercise of what is that reality like? And to be perfectly honest, I felt like it wasn't much different, because I feel like what would have happened to Thunderbird, based on his character, based on his attitude, based on his background, that he would have gone the way of Banshee during the Claremont Byrne era. He would have, because in a way, Banshee followed the same path. He just didn't die.
Right.
At that time, he sacrificed his power blow up the Moses Magnum mountain, and then he was off the team. He'd blown his voice out, basically.
God, that's a blast from the past. Moses Magnum.
Yeah. Love Moses Magnum. Come on.
That's a name I don't get to hear very often.
Techno blaxploitation villain right there.
Right?
But I feel like Thunderbird would have eventually met a similar fate where he would have had a crescendo of power and opportunity and then left the team. You know, and gone back to, you know, where he came from and been a hero for his, you know, people, or, you know, for his community or whatever. You know, I think one of the reasons why they killed him off in the first place was that he and Wolverine were too similar.
Yeah.
And that there was only room in the team for one sort of hothead, feral, you know, character. And Wolverine, I think, was the better play, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to live in the timeline where it was Wolverine that died on the airplane just to see what happened. But yeah. I think anyone with eyes to see would not try and deny that. Yeah, if you had to kill one, they picked the right one.
Yes, absolutely. And listen, I mean, what Claremont did, which was very smart, is that he made the death dramatically interesting and saying an X-Men could die.
Yeah.
That's the world we're living in now. With this all new, all different team, is their lives are at stake, and nobody is. Everybody is expendable, and it's dramatic. But he also, I mean, and it kind of left at that for a few years, but eventually introducing James Proudstar as Warpath, he provided even more resonance. Again, that was once you're on those characters or that team of characters for long enough, you look at what you've got, how you've set the table, and what do I pull out this month? Well, I can pull out John Proudstar's bitter little brother and turn him into a character. You know, I mean, it's how you treat long-term narratives.
Right.
So I would say that, yeah, I mean, he served his purpose even in death in a lot of different ways that were very resonant.
Now that I'm kind of sitting here thinking about it, and I don't know if this is you know, something that can be like looked into or could ever happen, but yeah, going back and looking at Thunderbird and, you know, where he's at by the time you get to the end of this issue, like what he's experienced. And I said the same thing for Chamber as well. I really hope, because you put these characters in what I feel is a pretty healthy place. You put them in a pretty healthy place where, you know, should they pop up somewhere else, hopefully someone will be goodly enough you know, to actually, like, you pay attention and maybe, you know, carry on. It's such a missed opportunity to let this team not go the distance, just because, man, there's a lot of really good storytelling I could see between, you know, just in those final moments for Thunderbird where he's like looking up in the sky and kind of like accepting his ultimate fate, and you know, there's some really good narrative moments there with him that kind of like we kind of get to see in real time him starting to like kind of accept that, you know, it is what it is. I guess as Wolverine says, death comes with the dinner. You know.
Well, I thought it was resonant. What I liked about that scene was that, again, they were so similar sort of as personalities in the beginning when they were first brought onto the team. And now we've got Wolverine with all these years of experience and perspective that Thunderbird doesn't have, is able to kind of give him that perspective. I mean, it's like the dynamic of those two characters is now reset. As opposed to being two hotheads. Now it's like the big brother, little brother kind of scenario of like the guy who traveled the path and knows the pitfalls and now can impart them to the guy who hasn't traveled that path or didn't travel that path. And I thought it was fitting that it was those two characters that now have that relationship. You know, I mean, I got to say, without getting too, like, you know, patting myself on the back, it's the thing that I am most proud of for this whole series, that the relationships between all the characters, the chemistry of the team, where Thunderbird especially has completed an arc in these 5 issues. He's somewhat at peace with himself for now.
Right.
And, you know, with long form narratives, that's how you do it. It's like conflict resolution. It's just this sort of endless cycle. But the problem that what happens is when with the marketplace as it is you rarely get a chance to get to those resolutions. It's always conflict cutoff, conflict cutoff, conflict cutoff. And rarely do they revisit the previous conflict. They go conflict cutoff. Well, that conflict didn't work. That's a new conflict. Oh, another cutoff. Well, that conflict is, so it's these characters just being run through the mill and never find a place of resolution, as you say, which is, I think, what readers respond to when they feel like, oh, I've been on this journey with this character. I've reached this resolution with this character. And it's not necessarily completely vicarious, but it's emotionally connected. Readers and what they're reading about. And it's the biggest problem I have at Marvel, especially, is these things that don't last. These things get cut off at the knees. You don't get that. You don't get those resolutions. And how can you embrace a character where you're never on solid ground, ever?
No.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because I literally was just I was literally answering a question for a fan yesterday, talking about how big two companies handle characters, their arcs, their journeys, and I always like to use the as a recent example of, I guess, schizophrenic storytelling. Is that you have Black Panther, he's this character, he's regal, he's royal, he's married to Storm at some point, and then somewhere down the road, someone else starts writing the character and says, I don't like that, so I'm getting rid of it, and then they get rid of it, and then another writer comes on and says, well, actually, I thought it was pretty cool, so I'm putting them back together, and then that book ends, and the very next writer, you know what? I don't like that, and so it ends up like, I feel like I know at the end of the day, I think everyone should be able to exercise their creative muscles, but I do at some points think that there are some things that, like, hey, if there's this thing that's like kind of established, maybe we should just leave it alone. Like, if it's something that, like, if readers are attached to it, for whatever reason, like, maybe let it be. Like maybe if people are really enjoying this one direction for this one character, why sweep it under the rug and pretend that it. I mean, if it was bad, sweep it under the rug. But like, if it was something that, like, is beloved, I think you should let it go. And I think that if you don't, when you have this inconsistency in characterization, or when characters are acting different from 1 minute to the next. Characters are in these unfathomable, and not even good unfathomable, but just like, why is this happening?
That's a lane that some creators pick in their career, which is, and it's been a thing that happens every so often the past 30 years. But it's just my personal opinion. Undoing is not the same as doing. Undoing something is not the same as doing something, and sometimes creators make that mistake. They think that the undoing of something is them doing something. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And what long continuities, and Marvel was great at this for the first 30 years, where they were constantly building on the past and building on events that had happened instead of undoing them. To your point, everybody seemed to be respectful of the continuity as this one giant evolving universe. Now, modern day creators, unfortunately, even as fans, have lived through reboots and restarts and redos and all this kind of stuff. So it's part of their DNA as they enter the business as professionals. Well, that's how comics do it. They undo things. It's part of the toolbox, is undoing something. And for me, it's just not the same as doing something. There's nothing more satisfying to me as a writer with these long form continuities is to build on everything that's come before, to make it all make sense for the emotional makeup of the character that you're now writing. I mean, it's really fun and satisfying to know that you didn't just take the easy way out and just undo something you didn't like. it's much more of a challenge to take what you didn't like and how does it inform the character? How does it work for the character? And how does it work for the character going forward? How do you build on that, going forward? I mean, it's the hat trick, man. It's the total hat trick. And it
Oh
takes
yeah.
it takes a lot, it's a lot of effort,
I don't know. I hope that we get back to that era of building. I hope. I really kind of feel what you're saying when you talk about how like current generation, because I feel like you can kind of see it in a lot of the different comics that have been coming out. Like, it's like, okay, the people that were reading comics, at a certain particular point, some of those people are now making comics, and whatever it was that they got used to there, yeah, they're making those things. But I kind of hope that we get, like, because everything's cyclical, I hope we kind of get back to that point where it's like, okay, how about we, instead of every single comic that comes out, hey, we're undoing this. Hey, remember that thing that you really thought was cool? Well, guess what? It don't exist no more. Like, I hope we get to the point where we get back to like, hey, you know what? That comic you read 5 years ago? Well, guess what? We're building some more on that. Like, we've actually evolved those characters from there, and it just keeps going. And I hope we get back. I don't know if we ever will, but I hope we do.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's funny because like Marvel is a multi-headed Hydra. It's tough to get one brain in sync with the other brains and whatever. But it's funny because I think the MCU, the movies are going to soon run into that problem in a different way, which is
Yeah.
casting. At some point they're going to have to come up with a new Iron Man, and unless
Mhm.
and I don't mean a new Iron Man, a new Tony Stark Iron Man.
Yes. Yes.
So to get people on board with a Tony Stark Iron Man that's not Robert Downey Jr., it's not impossible. The challenge is how do they do it?
It's
How do they do it without undoing something? It's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to
yeah.
see.
Well, it's why, like, hell, there's a whole recast T'Challa movement. And I laugh at it a lot, largely because it's a lot of the people I don't think are terribly serious. But the same issue that you would have, like, replacing Robert Downey Jr., you'd have the same problem replacing. And thing is, the proof is in the pudding because we're literally watching it happen in real time. We're
Yeah.
literally watching people be angry about, oh, well, you made this character this, you made that character that, so on and so forth. If this is how y'all are acting about a mantle being passed, imagine how y'all would act about another actor coming, like a younger actor coming in replacing Robert A. Jr. or like actively replacing Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, like, and why I always tell people, like, because there was like, oh, well, Chadwick Boseman's dead, why have they replaced Black Panther? And I was like, well, because none of y'all are going to be happy with who they pick. Like, even if some people are happy, not everyone's going to be happy, and that role is going to forever have the ghost of Chadwick Boseman looming over it. No matter how good the actor is that comes in after, it's not going to make a difference. That actor is never going to live up. It's the same reason why while I didn't like the idea that they didn't recast Joker, after Heath Ledger's death, and when they did Dark Knight Rises, because it became pretty obvious he was supposed to still be there.
Sure.
It's one of those things where, like, the ghost of Heath Ledger would literally loom over that character. No one would accept whoever came after, and it's good, and that exists whether the person's still alive or dead. So,
and they didn't. Hey, listen, they didn't accept who came next. Nobody looks at Jared Leto and goes, the Joker, man, he's Joker.
That's the guy.
They just sort of forget that it existed.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing really what people forget is that in the 90s, the Batman movies, the 4 Batman movies changed Batman 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say now, well, it's, you look at it with a historical eye, but at the time, even if people couldn't articulate it, that had an effect.
Oh, yeah.
By the time we got to the Clooney Batman, as much as I love George Clooney,
mm-hmm.
it was like another fucking Batman. It's only been 8 years. It's the first Batman, you know what I mean? Like, it just happened so quickly that I think it had a psychological effect on people, and movies can't do what comics used to be able to do, which was you could count on comic books being cyclical from a childhood readership, the new kids were coming in. They didn't have the baggage because they were young. They just didn't have the
Right.
baggage. But movie audiences carry their baggage all their lives.
Oh, yes.
All their lives. So good luck to them. You know what I mean? Good luck to them.
Or let new characters come in, or we have to replace these actors at some point. Because I mean, as much as I love Ryan Reynolds, I don't want to see that dude playing Deadpool when he's like in his like 60s or 70s. I'm sure he'll still be great, but that's not what I want to see.
Here's my last theory in the MCU, which I think is another hot take, baby. Endgame, Avengers Endgame.
Mhm.
The best and the worst thing that could have ever happened to the MCU.
Oh,
The
yes.
best was a perfect culmination of all these things. The worst in that it did two things, two very separate things, but are related. One was when 10 minutes in, they did 5 years later. I was like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
So they did 5 years later. So that was the first thing that was like, uh-oh, they're missing something here. Then the other thing that did in that same movie was when they put years on the past events, like, New York 2012 or whatever, I was like, oh, they're locking this into real time.
Mm-hmm.
They're fucked.
Yeah.
They are fucked now.
Because it's a lot easier to not pay attention to like, oh, well, this is during, so and so.
Yes, is what comic books have learned how to do, which is not mark the year, not mark the time. So that sliding timeline can always exist. And as far as we know right now, the Fantastic Four launched their rocket in 2018 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 2017. And in 5 more years, it'll be 2022. Well, but putting those dates on those scenes, even at the time, I was like, oh man. I mean, on the one hand, it was elevating the movies to a different level of like narrative resonance, which I'm all for. But for the long-term perspective of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I was like, oh, they're fucked. They are fucked now. Because we're going on, the events of the first Avengers movie are going on, 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
14 years ago. I mean, it's gonna get weird. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. It's gonna get weird.
Well, I think that's the issue that Marvel needs to be absolutely worried about, is the fact that, like, yeah, people like you and myself, we're gonna roll with it, but there's a lot of casuals and normies that they're not gonna be able to they're not gonna be able to get jiggy with that. So
It's happening. It's happening as we speak.
Yeah.
Listen, anybody who's listening, who's making those movies, don't timestamp your superheroes. Don't do it.
Nope.
You're just fucking yourself.
It's like, not everybody gets to be Captain America.
Right.
Not everybody gets to be like when because that's what you would have to do to like fix it. You would have to do that. You'd have to Captain America each of them. Everybody's got to go into ice and then wake up like however many millions of years later.
Listen, that's why in the Weapon X-Men issue, I made it a point that to everybody involved, from Crisscross on down, don't draw the 1975 scenes as though it was 1975.
Right.
Don't give it that retro coloring treatment. Don't do it. Nothing. It's got to look like it happened 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Which to Chris Cross's credit, I actually really liked the layouts on a lot of the retro scenes that because not to knock the artists of the past, because I mean they were great, they're legends, but comics have evolved so much at a certain point where now readers expect more dynamic poses, more dynamic action sequences. And the scenes where they're diving out of the jet and coming down, like it was like, I was like, oh dude, I was like that, because I was like, you couldn't do that. I mean, you could, but I don't think anyone had a mind to do stuff exactly like that back then. You wouldn't start seeing stuff similar to that till like the 90s.
Yes.
And it was like, oh, and but it didn't break the integrity of the scene. It was like, no, this is a shot that if we saw it, they would be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they did do the same thing. It's just that we're seeing it from a more modern angle.
Yeah,
And
that was it. Yeah.
I appreciated that.
I left it up to the art to modernize the moment. That's why I left the dialogue exactly the way it was. So your mind is making the connection of like, yeah, especially like what you did. If you compare it to the old issue, it is the scene. It's just we're seeing it visually through a modern lens, which you have to do. You have to do keep the continuity fluid and make sure that no one dismisses the past as though it were 50 years ago, because in the continuity, it was not 50 years ago.
Nope. It was just present day.
Yeah.
Or just a time, like an indistinct or nondescript, like present day, like just whenever. There's no like exact letter of the law, what day, month, year, any of that stuff was happening.
Right.
Well, I will say this before we get out of here. I just want to make something very clear. Y'all go check out this final issue of Weapon X-Men. Go buy the shit out of it. So that way, the bean counters, those are the people we got to convince. So you got to go buy all the issues. Go buy all the back issues that you see. Whenever the trade comes out, go buy the hell out of that. And go get all of it, because I want more of this, and that's how this works. That's how I've been told that this works. You gotta catch the attention of the accountants.
Yeah. It's gotta be numbers on a piece of paper somewhere. Numbers on a screen. That's all they give a shit about.
Look, they don't care how much we love it. It's how much money did it make? So go give it all the money. Go give it all the money, and hopefully we can get to see more of this. There's going to be links to some other works that Joe is working on right now. If you're like, man, I really want to check out some more stuff, there's links down below. You can go check out a lot of Joe's work.
If anybody's interested in sort of more behind the scenes stuff on Weapon X-Men, I've been doing on my Substack these kind of Easter egg follow-ups after the issue comes out. For issue 5, there'll be a two-part newsletter that really dives in and does the comparisons with the old comic and gets into some of the more behind the scenes stuff than even we went into today, because there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to this issue. The Substack is free, so like I always say, you'll get your money's worth.
Hey, there will be a link down below to that as well, so make sure y'all go click on that. And I'm gonna specifically call this one out just because I have had such a great time reading this book. Y'all need to go read Blood Squad 7. That is your assignment. After you go to the Substack, subscribe to the Substack, then go read Blood Squad 7, because it's great.
I'll tease this: Blood Squad 7 is about to go into its third story arc, and it is going to get very interesting. In fact, you could say that Weapon X-Men 5 was kind of a warm-up for what we're going to do in the next arc of Blood Squad 7.
Yeah. Look, I as a person who was like an old school Image Comics fan, I don't know who thought it was smart to let me walk in and buy these comics, but I was always buying like Wildcats and Youngblood and Stormwatch, all like the really superhero-y books that Image used to have back in the day. But Youngblood was definitely Youngblood and Wildcats were my particular favorites, but I read all of them. All, like, the more extreme, the better. But yeah, I had been and I've been doing the same thing with Blood Squad 7 that I've been doing with your Weapon X-Men. I've been reading Blood Squad 7 and then going back and looking at some of the stuff from like old Youngblood and being like, oh man, that's so cool. He went there. Yeah. I was like, so yeah, that's just my homework. That's my personal assignment for y'all.
I will say this: where I'm going in the third arc, where we're going in the third arc, and I'll talk about this there's a Substack coming up that kind of gets into more of it, but I'm going after a pretty sacred cow that few writers would dare to tread on. But just that I'm just that crazy. I'm just that crazy.
Well, hey, then I think that's even more excuse for y'all to go read Blood Squad 7 so y'all can find out just how crazy Joe is to do what he's about to do. Y'all go check out Weapon X-Men #5. Go hit your local comic shop. Go pick up go buy up all the copies. Don't worry about anybody else. Just get copies of it. No, save some for people. Save some for some of the people. Don't take all of them, but still get like two. Get like two. One to read and then one to put in your in a bag and a board or whatever people put comics in nowadays.
Listen, don't worry. One day when Ryan Reynolds gets a look at this comic, he'll know what the next Deadpool movie is going to be.
Hey, give him ideas. Give him ideas.